Hey guys, and welcome to the Hobby News. Well, we got some more Elder releases this week, and it's looking good. I'm really enjoying, I guess, the direction that they're going in with these. As I said on my last video for the Aeldari, they're going down I guess, a very, I guess, safe design road, but one that really does look back to the history and the, I guess, lore background design aesthetic of the Eldar as they've been for the last 20 plus years. And so I think this is a really great thing, looking back towards Jess Goodwin designs and so on, and trying to keep that aesthetic going. I think that's what all Elder players really want, is basically more of the same but better, right? So lovely new plastic kits with all the detail and so on, but still maintaining the aesthetic that they know and love. And they can add those to their collection and nothing looks out of place and all of that kind of stuff, which I think is great. So that's what we're going to see in this preview here, is more of that, which we'll go into. We'll look at the designs, look at the details, but ultimately these warlocks we're about to look at are as warlocks have always been, but yeah, just probably a little bit bigger, I would imagine, or a little bit taller, and the detail just a lot crisper and a lot nicer. So that's really cool. So let's get into this. These new Aeldari Warlocks will help you win the Mind War. Okay, so we've already shown off the stunning new Aeldari Guardians and the fearsome Dark Reapers. Now it's the Warlocks' time in the sun as we unveil the future and another gorgeous new plastic kit. Yeah, so they've done a great job here. I mean, these are beautiful looking miniatures. Again, for all Elder fans, I can't see anyone disliking these. The Dark Reaper faces aside, ultimately this is a pretty great range of new models for Eldar. We've got some good dynamic movement here, so we're getting a little bit more into those action poses again, not as static as some we've seen, and we're starting to see some bit of what you call a little bit of contrapposto going on in some of this, and obviously it's helped by the flowing robes. Contrapposto meaning a twist in the body, which for sculptors is the way you get to show movement, right? So the torso moving one way, the hips moving another, and then you generate the impression of action, of potential action. That's the idea. So for anyone that's not familiar with that term, that's what we're seeing a little bit here. We're starting to see some movement. The head's twisting. We're seeing the plumes on top of the heads here moving in a direction that's in line with the flow of the wind that's blowing the model's sort of coat. This is all great stuff we're seeing. Really nice crisp lines. As you can see, the painters have done a great job of picking that out. So these are going to be really nice, like the whole Elder range, basically. It's going to be great for painters. They've kept all those nice, smooth areas for you to do this type of blending and edge highlighting. Because they're crisper, it's going to be an easier job of picking out those highlight areas and those details. As we can see from this row, we're getting some nice cuts in here. That's all really good. It's one of those elements of design that sometimes gets overlooked in generally in minis. Often, it's hard. Like, I'm a sculptor. If you look in the Blighted Gods link in the description, that's my brand. And it's difficult to do minis. I'm now doing like a 75mm scale or a heroic 75mm scale, but to get down to this level, this sort of oversized 28mm and get these nice hard lines and these smooth areas is hard, because as a sculptor you want to put in detail, right? And if you put in too much detail on this size, it starts to really become a problem for the painting of it. Now, for those that are new to painting and think, oh great, all that texture is going to be really good, I can throw a contrast paint on it or whatever, that's great. But once you start moving along in your little painting journey, you're going to find that smooth areas are actually really important, to establish the lights and the darks and get a better sense of what's going on in the model, and areas of rest as well. That's an important feature. On such a small model, it's hard, it's too easy in a sculpting program to just add a lot of detail, because it's quite simple to do that. And you can overdo it. And when you see 3D prints, generally, this is what you usually find. Not on all of them, but it is difficult to restrain yourself as a sculptor when you're in a program like ZBrush, which is what a lot of them are sculpted in. And the ones that are more done by artists, they're often using ZBrush, which is made by Pixelogic. It's a 3D sculpting program, if you don't know. And you can. They have these things called alphas and this type of I guess brush where you can stamp detail into the surface and do very high fidelity textures, and that can become obviously you do that in larger scales or for video games, movies, that sort of thing, where you're doing hyper realistic stuff. That becomes really important. Poor texture for skin, all that sort of thing, scales and so on. But on a small little miniature like this, you actually want less. Less is more, basically. And that's what Games Workshop has always been great at. They understand the balance of smooth to detail. Like, they have highly detailed models, but if you notice, they only imply texture or detail on very specific surfaces. They don't do it all over the model. And so therefore it makes painting them a lot more pleasurable. And that's what we're seeing here. So for elder painters and people that like to do this stuff just for the pure painting of it, or if you're a gamer and you want to do that contrast style, this actually is going to help all of that. If you want speed painting techniques and so on, they have very deep cut lines and so on that are going to help in your painting process, regardless of what level you are. So yeah, just some thoughts on that. That's something that I notice, as I've been developing as a sculptor and so on. It's a problem that I have too. Like, if you look at my sculpts, I obviously come from movie sculpting, so I'm prone to adding detail, and that comes across in a lot of the sculpts I do. But I'm learning this process of restraint, and it is difficult. It takes a long time, but they always nail it. That's a hallmark of Games Workshop minis, which is why they're so popular. Ultimately, it's not just the designs; it's that attention to the actual structure of these things and the scale that they're in. So yeah, just a few thoughts there, but let's see what else we've got. So what I've also noticed here as we come to the details is that they're giving you a lot of options in these kits, in these elder kits, and they're talking about it as well. They tell you that you can have it without helmets or with. They're giving you the different weapon choices. We saw that with the Autark as well, and I think that that's an important feature of this new range. It's quite clear that when they were designing this, which I'm imagining would have started its life somewhere mid to late 8th edition, I would imagine, is where they would have begun talking about this and developing this. Basically, because of the number of kits that are coming out, they would have begun those kind of ideas around that time, I would imagine. And if you think back to that time, and I guess people's reactions to when, let's say, Primera Space Marines were released, and sort of not a bad, I guess it just, they released them, as far as I'm aware, I wasn't around for when they were first released, but in a way that maybe the community at large weren't exactly happy with how they came out or how they were presented. And here we're seeing a different kind of presentation, and I think that they're learning from that. At least the design aesthetic and the choices they're making for these kits seem to be in line with, I guess, what we all kind of prefer in our minis, generally, and those that have been around for a while. This does have the hallmarks and the feeling of an earlier time, and whichever management or head designers that were around when they started coming up with this and their overall principles for moving it forward, it does feel like that they're paying attention to what we like to see in a minis kit. They're giving you all the options. They're putting it all in the one kit, so you don't have to muck around with a lot of conversion if you don't want to. They're giving you additional choices. That it feels like an old school kit done in a new way. You know what I mean? That's the kind of sensation that I'm getting from this Elder range, is that they're paying more attention to actually what we like to see in our minis, and I think that that's great. And hopefully whatever principles they've put in place for this range also go through to some of the other ranges as it moves forward, because I think that they're going to see a much more positive reaction to their kits and obviously sales and stuff like that. Due to this, it's just going to help, right? And that's that cue for them to say, okay, maybe we're on a better track here. Maybe this is a more positive way to release a range, to listen to what the community wants for their minis. And I think generally that's what I get the sensation here, the feeling. I mean, if you feel different, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think, but it certainly feels like that to me. I mean, this feels genuine. I can see the sculptors having a good time with these and paying attention to a lot of, aspects of what Eldar are, and trying to include as much as possible, and staying true to that lineage. And it's great. So we're seeing all of these different helmet options. Now the paint jobs on these faces might be a little bit too harsh for what they are. That's a problem when you're dealing with I guess Eldar generally are quite soft in their nature, so it's more of a feminine, application of paint for the faces, even for the men. And when you do these heavy cut lines around the mouth and so on, it tends to make a slightly stranger kind of almost uncanny valley feeling on these models. And so I would say the only thing that I would probably do with this paint job, because I don't think it's the sculpt. I think the sculpt is fine. I think this is actually just a paint job thing. But you notice this sort of heavy shadow. I would just probably do a tone lighter just around the mouth, and only have the heavier part just up here in the cut line where it meets the nose, and then fade this out a bit more just to soften the face slightly. Maybe not in I don't know, maybe. Yeah, no, I would definitely do that. Yeah, just to soften that up, and I think that would change the face a lot and put a bit more youth into it, as these are, generally a very youthful-looking race, mostly. And so, yeah, I would just change that. But otherwise, everything about this is great. I mean, the painter's done a great job. I love all the blending on the blades and so on. And then we see here, so they're again referencing that lineage, Jessica Wynn designs from back in the day. That's a really great thing, and I can't stress that enough. It's good that these types of things are being looked at and incorporated into a giant miniature making machine that doesn't have to pay attention to these things. They don't have to do this, but it's good that they are, because it shows that on some level, at least in the design side of the company, there's still a lot of people that care and want to see, that whole process of what we love about this hobby and about miniatures coming through over all these decades, and that's great. I can imagine a kid watching maybe this video or whatever, going onto the website and coming across this article and seeing this for the first time. Something that myself and others out there that have been in this hobby for a very long time, this was our first experience of what Warhammer was. This kind of retro 80s, slightly punk, that 80s, 90s aesthetic, and they're going to get a chance, to experience this for the first time. This article might even be their first piece of artwork they see. Just imagine that in this day and age, that this Jessica Gwynn drawing could be one of their first images they get exposed to with Warhammer. And what a great idea, right? That's all evocative stuff in this image, or a John Blanche image or whatever. It's great that comes through in this modern age, that we get to see this, because this is raw. This isn't like jazzed up like most concept art that you see. This is just pen and paper kind of stuff. He's just really just working through the design here. You can see it in the way he's doing these soft sketches here, and then doing the more finished versions. This is really, really good design stuff to look at if you're interested in this. This is what concept art really looks like. I've been on movies. It doesn't look like the sort of finished stuff that you see. Only rarely. Often the timelines for a lot of this stuff is often very fast, so you don't have a lot of time to muck around with making very pretty images. It's all about resolving whatever design problem or issue that you have, getting that across. As long as it does that and it completes the job that you need to do, then it's fine and it gets okayed, and then you move on, because these go through many iterations. Many artists touch them. It's not just one artist. Even many sculptors. They doesn't always just stay with one person, and so over time you get that refinement, you get that final finish. But in any single step, it's often this more rough type of thing, where it's just trying to resolve an overall concept. So that's really cool. I'm really, really happy to see this in an article like this, because that's important. Sorry, just to have my artistic bent coming forward there. Hope it's not too boring to listen to. But overall, look, I mean, we'll get back to the real thing, these minis, right? And they're just great, and they're going to be fun to paint. And this year, I've decided to maybe dabble in a little bit of elves and Eldar and things like that, something I've never done in over 30 years in this hobby. So you'll probably see on the channel some painting tutorials and some, a little dabble into this, and from fresh eyes, because I've never painted Eldari elves. I've always stayed away from them. But I've decided that again, from a painting point of view, they allow you to explore a lot of color palettes that are unique to them, and I'm really interested in that and exploring a wider range of colors and schemes, and just exploring some different ideas. So I'm looking forward to experimenting with this, and moving past my bias against elves and that sort of thing, as many of us are, the old school players. Often we have a bit of a thing against the old Eldar and that sort of thing. But I'm looking to move past my biases and explore these for the beautiful minis that they are. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Please hit the like button, subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I guess I'll catch you on the next one.